Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most beloved, worshipable Diksha Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishto Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. That I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhara Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Asto Tarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. And I offer my Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of all my Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavis. So now, we're continuing with the purport by Srila Sachidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur of the first shloka. And he is now about to quote the same verse that was quoted by Radha Ramandas Goswami, regarding how, from the Padma Purana, regarding how a person who has the agitations and his heart is invaded by shoka, that means lamentation, and harsha, adibir, anger, lamentation, and other agitations. How can it ever be possible that for such a person who has this in his heart, that Sri Mukunda, Sri Krishna, could ever be manifest to such a person? So notice how these two great acharyas have quoted the same verse. And we've broken this down a bit already in the analysis of Sri Radharaman Das Goswami. So now Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to elaborate on this more. So in the Padma Purana it is said, Shoka marsh adibir bhavayir, akrantam yasya manasam, katam tatra mukundasya, spurti sambhavana bhavet. Spurti. You all know what spurti means. It means momentary vision. Spurti, to be manifest. So the purport of this verse is that lust, anger, greed, illusion, intoxication, envy, and other irritations always arise within the mind, and thus they attract the mind towards material sense objects. Got that? This is the sequence, that these arise, and when they arise in the mind, then they cause the mind to be attracted toward material sense objects. This is affected through 6 agencies. Number 1, which agencies? Yes. So the first one, these agencies, in other words, this attraction of the mind toward material sense objects is affected through the 6 agencies of Vachovegam, Manasavegam, Krodhavegam, Jiva-vegam, Udara-vegam, Upasavegam. So, when that is there in the heart, lust, anger, greed, illusion, intoxication, envy, and other irritations, then the mind will become attracted to sense objects through these 6 agencies. So here it is. Number 1, by the urge to speak. By the urge to speak or the use of words that create distress for others. Number 2, by the agitation of the mind or the innumerable desires and plans fabricated within the mind. Have we experienced that before? The agitation of the mind, the innumerable desires and plans fabricated within the mind. Number 3, by anger or the use of harsh words. Just see how 1 and 3 are mentioning the urge to speak or the use of words that create distress for others. Number 3, by anger or the use of harsh words. So the urge to speak then becomes manifested through anger and so on, or becomes a vehicle for anger to be expressed. Number 4, by the vehemence of the tongue or the greed to relish 6 kinds of taste: sweet, sour, bitter, pungent, salty, and astringent. Number 5, by the urge of the belly or the drive to eat more than necessary. And number 6, by the agitation of the genitals or the desire for cohabitation between men and women. Thus agitated, the cultivation of Shuddha Bhakti is not possible. So that should be very clear to us by now, what we've been studying, right? That the actual cultivation of Shuddha Bhakti is simply not possible when all these are present. So in order to make the hearts of those who are pursuing the path of bhajan intent on bhakti, Srila Rupa Goswami has composed this verse first. The attempt to restrain these 6 urges, it does not constitute bhakti sadhana. Rather, it is a staircase to ascend to the platform of eligibility through which one may enter the temple of bhakti. In a different way, he's expressing the same thing. What Radharaman Das Goswami told. So, on the paths of fruitive activity, karma, and the cultivation of knowledge, jnana, one is instructed to curb these 6 urges. These instructions, however, are not applicable for pure devotees. In the scriptures, hearing, chanting, and remembrance of the names, form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna are described as actual bhakti. So these 6 urges present various types of obstacles in the immature stage for the practitioner entering the path of bhakti. At that time, the devotee, by taking shelter of the mood of exclusive sharanagati and by avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses to the holy name, Namaparad, he becomes fit to dispel these obstacles through the power of Harinam, Kirtan, and so on. So that's good news, right? Just like yesterday, Ramai was asking that question. But then I thought she must not have been there in the class when we were reading Srila Prabhupada's report. Remember what her question was yesterday?
She was saying, isn't the path of practicing bhakti the means to control the 6 urges? It's pretty much the essence of bhakti.
Yeah, she was kind of saying that how can we come to bhakti if we can't control these 6 urges? Something like that, right? So then I was thinking, we just read Srila Prabhupada's purport for 2-3 days. And there, Srila Prabhupada was giving the solution of different practices of bhakti for each and every one of the 6 urges. Right? Prabhupada was explaining that the urge to speak can be curbed by speaking about Krishna, and so forth. Every solution to this was bhakti. It was not just some, harsh austerity attempt to control this, to tolerate this. No. On the path of sadhana bhakti, the practitioner will have to gradually learn, to learn how to be absorbed in bhakti. So, as one becomes more experienced and has plenty of experience in our own lives, then we realize what are the particular parameters that we have to deal with these 6 urges, right? It's kind of like Srila Raghunath Das Goswami's suggestions in Manasiksha. My dear mind, please do such and such. Just give up all pride. Just develop attachment, develop priti, love and affection, like this. And each one of the perversions of the mind and material desires that will arise, he's dealing with that shloka by shloka by shloka. And each place he's telling the mind, don't do this, do this. Engage your mind always in the transcendental remembrance of the name, form, qualities, pastimes of the divine couple, and so forth. So the path of sadhana bhakti is sublime. It's full of sublime experience within the mind and even on the bodily level. But at the same time, these urges, these vega, they are there, lurking. And we know that if we allow our mind to go in a certain direction, then what will happen? We'll get pulled, right? So we gradually become conscious that, no, I can't allow you to go there at all, right? So just like in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining what? Dhyayato vishaya purusan sangasteshu prajayate. He's explaining how, by association with the sense objects, contemplating them first of all, then one develops attachment, lust. So we know that very well. We know those verses as well. We heard them many, many times. But the mind is one of the Vegas, the agitations of the mind. So Krishna is telling to Arjuna that you have to understand that if you allow your mind to contemplate something, then there's another thing that's going to happen to your mind. Your mind is going to get transformed onto the physical level now, right? Samgasteshu pajayate. Samgat sanjayate kama. Then comes lust. And that manifests in the physical body as well. At first it's just the thought on the subtle level. But then, if you continue to meditate upon that, allow your mind to associate with that object, then attachment comes, and then lust arises. So kama krodha vijayate, then comes the anger. And that's also one of the 6 urges, right? Krodha bhavati sammoha. Then when one becomes angered, then becomes bewildered. Some bewilderment of the mind then comes. Sammoha. Sammohat smriti vibhrama. Then your memory is completely vibram, means like illusioned. Vibhrama. Smriti brahmshad buddhinasho. And when your memory is destroyed, then your intelligence now becomes also destroyed. Your ability to discriminate and understand what you should do, what you should not do. And then, buddhinashat pranashiti. That's the last point. When the intelligence is gone, then one just falls down. Falls down means what? You just dive headlong into sense gratification. So, here he's saying that these 6 urges present various types of obstacles in the immature stage for the practitioner entering the path of bhakti. At that time, the devotee, by taking shelter of the mood of exclusive sharanagati, and by avoiding the 10 kinds of offenses to the holy name, Namaparad, becomes fit to dispel these obstacles through the power of Harinam Kirtan and so on. That's what we were engaged in, wasn't it? We were engaged in, we even told the 10 offenses every day after Mangalartik. Okay, here they are. Now, be aware, don't commit these offenses, And we were engaged so much in chanting the holy names. So this is the formula. And then he says, after the devotee becomes fit to dispel these obstacles through the power of Harinam Kirtan and so on, then he says, the association of spotless saints, sadhus, plays a very significant role in this matter. The Padma Purana says, Shrutvapi nama mahatmyam yapriti rahito dhamma aham mamadi paramo namni sokyaradha krit. So this is actually one of the offenses. This is the list of offenses in the Padma Purana in Sanskrit. I remember actually when I was in Vrindavan in 1977, that period when Prabhupada was in his final stages. But the Gurukula boys who were living there at that time, they came into the temple room every day. And they chanted all the Govinda Adipurusham prayers. And then they also chanted the Sanskrit of the 10 offenses, right? And because I was hearing them, although I didn't make the effort myself to actually completely commit to memory that. I was thinking about it the other day. I should look this up again, and I should now make another try to memorize the actual Sanskrit of the 10 offenses. So, what is the meaning of this verse? Those who, in spite of hearing the astonishing glories of the holy name, who maintain the conception that I am this material body, and that the worldly objects are mine, and who display no persistence in or love for the utterance of the holy name, are also offenders to the holy name. So that has a few different features, that particular offense. Let's break it down. First one, Shrutavapi Nama Mahatmyam. That means those who, in spite of hearing the astonishing glories of the holy name, and they maintain the conception that I am this material body, aham mamadi. So we've heard this before, aham mama. So that's referring to what?
I am mine.
Yeah. How the false ego functions within this conditioned entrapment by the material potency. How it functions. It functions with these two aspects, aham, mama. I and mine. Our false ego is now telling us that very subtle link between the Atma and the subtle and gross material energies is the false ego, the ahankar. And the word ahankar means I-ness. Ahankar, my conception of myself. So, Krishna's energy is so amazingly powerful, and the conditioned souls, we've experienced as being conditioned souls, that we just live in this realm of illusory identification and then illusory attachment. Right? And it's astonishing. I mean, no scientist in this material world, even though they like to study, I'm reading things about how they're studying the RNA and DNA, and they're trying to break down all these constituents of what makes up our biological existence, and they're trying to patent it and control it, and they want transhumanism, like merging the human being with machines, actually physically merging them, okay, which is just so utterly demonic. But yet, they are very much desiring to accomplish this. This is inevitable, they're saying. This is inevitable. It's going to happen. But what they don't know about the inevitability is you, Mr. Scientist, you're going to be ripped out of this body, and you're going to be stuck in another womb somewhere, maybe a tree body or whatever, because you're a gross atheist, and you're going to completely forget everything, because the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord is all-powerful, and you have no power at all, you foolish, stupid, materialistic, demonic scientist. And you're thinking that you're all-powerful, and you can control this and control that, but you won't even be able to control anything. This body, you'll have no body to control. And then you'll be stuck for thousands of years and even millions of years. I was listening to Prabhupada's tape the other day, and he was saying this. Millions of years. He said we should be very, very careful. Prabhupada was talking about the verse of Krishna's, where he says there's 4 types of dushkritina, impious persons. And he's talking about the Naradhama. Right? He was giving a lecture. I could tell he was in India, maybe even in Vrindavan, by the way that he was speaking and the sounds that were. So he was giving this lecture, and he was saying, what is the meaning of Naradhama?
Lost of one man.
Yeah. Can you break down the word?
Well, Nara is man.
Yes.
lowest religion.
No, adhama, not adharma. Adhama. That means lowest. Adhama. So, naradhama means lowest amongst the human beings. So then Prabhupada was saying, he said, so there may be some persons, when they hear that we are calling them lowest amongst human beings, they may have some objection, and they may say, well, but I have gone to university, I have a very big degree, I have so much knowledge, I have big bank balance, you're calling me the lowest amongst human beings? And Prabhupada said, they may feel like this, but I'm not calling, Krishna's calling. Yes, you are the lowest amongst the human beings. Because why? Because although you know these various little bits and pieces of your materialistic knowledge, but you don't even know that you're not this body, and you don't believe that there's even a next life. So you're the lowest amongst the human beings. And Krishna also says that even further, not only lowest, but mayaya apahrita jnana. You think you have jnana, you think you have knowledge, but actually all that knowledge cannot help you one single bit at the time of death. Mayaya apahrita jnana. That means your so-called knowledge has simply been stolen by illusion. Mayaya. So, I forgot how we got onto this tangent. What were we saying? Oh yes, the material conception of I and mine. So really, if we're hearing the glories of Krishna's names and forms, qualities, everything, despite hearing this, but if somebody still is determined to maintain this conception that I'm this material body, Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Shri Radha Govinda Jiva Ki Jai. This Aham Mamadi Paramo. He maintains this bodily conception despite hearing all the glories of the holy name, and all these objects belong to me, they are mine. So with this, if we're chanting with this conception, I'm this body and everything is mine, then, and also we're not displaying persistence in the utterance of the holy name, nor are we displaying love for the holy name, then we are offenders. Aparadi. We're offenders. So we don't want to be nam aparadis, because that is not a good thing. So we have to try to follow properly and avoid these 10 offenses. But the thing is that if someone is performing that aparad, it will be difficult for them. That's the 10th offense, if I remember correctly. That's the 10th offense. So, that's why we have to be vigilant in our spiritual life. We have to be vigilant. And this Upadeshamrita is for that. To give us the right direction, to give us the inspiration, everything Rupa Goswami is providing, so that we can actually come onto the path of Shuddha Bhakti.
The question I used to think, and now, just correct me if my conception is right or not, but I used to think that that first verse of Upadeshamrita, that Srila Rupa Goswami is actually giving sort of a low threshold for one who could make disciples all over the world. Because he's saying that one who can control these urges is qualified to make disciples all over the world. But now in hearing from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, Rupa Goswami is being tricky because the only person that will be able to control these urges is a devotee who follows Sharanagati, is offenseless and chanting all of these. These are the only ways to do it.
Yeah.
So therefore, what he's done, he's saying, well, here, you at least have to be able to control these 6 urges, and then people with discrimination will then see that, oh, the only people qualified to make disciples are pure devotees, basically. That can...
Yeah. It's not possible for somebody who has lust, anger, greed, illusion, all these things in the heart, to come into the path of Shuddha Bhakti, and it's not possible for them to develop the mood of Sharanagati, surrender, and therefore they're still standing outside of the house of Bhakti. They haven't gone in through the doorway. Not only that, but at the end of his purport, Sri Radharaman Das Goswami quoted that verse from 11th canto, where Krishna is telling Uddhava that, oh, that person whose hairs stand on end, who becomes so overjoyed and heart is melting, and sometimes he's laughing, sometimes he's weeping. In other words, someone who's attained the stage of ecstatic love, bhav bhakti, that person purifies himself and the whole world. That's the actual standard, what Rupa Goswami is referring to, without saying it, right? Without saying it. But he's giving the outline. It's like an outline, you know? Right? It's like when you have an outline, you make I, and then the main theme, and then under that A, B, C, D. So, you know, he's repeating what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told, and in order to come up to the level of Rag Marg Bhakti, someone will have to have practiced in this way.
But for those who, let's say, have impersonalist gurus, or even Buddhist gurus, or Christian priests, or Gotra Brahmins, or whatever, because he's just being very simple here, you have to have this qualification, so they can thus measure, is my teacher, is he controlling these 6 urges? Unless he's a pure devotee, he won't be able to.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, like I was telling how Gurudev told, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told, that this first sloka of the Upadeshamrita is a thunderbolt for the Sahajiya, Prakriti Sahajiyas. And there are so many types of cheating, you know, who pose themselves as gurus or priests or instructors, whatever. But there will absolutely be deviation if they are not pure. You know, I remember we were in Detroit with Srila Prabhupada in 1976, and these 3 or 4 Presbyterian ministers came to visit Prabhupada in their black outfits and their white collars, and they were very nice elderly gentlemen, you know. They appreciated Prabhupada very much. And I was actually even reading the transcript of that conversation. We were all sitting around, actually. It was on a veranda of that mansion-like place in Detroit, you know, Fisher Mansion. And it was like overlooking the big river where boats and yachts were going by. And so Srila Prabhupada had them bring chairs, and there was quite a few devotees who were there. A lot of them had gone out on Sankirtan, but a lot were still back. So we got to hear the whole conversation from beginning to end. You know, and here's the thing, Srila Prabhupada was emphasizing to them, he was quoting from the Bhagavad Gita the qualities of a Brahmana, right, in the mode of goodness. And he was telling to them that here's what our scriptures say, that if a person is to gain the qualification for God realization, he must have these qualities in he must come into this level, the mode of goodness. So what Prabhupada was doing, you know how Prabhupada always would challenge the Christians at meat eating and thou shalt not kill, and you're not actually following. But these men were very respectful. And so Srila Prabhupada was just simply showing them that here, Satya Dhamma, how does that go? The verse of the Brahminical qualities. I can't remember the Sanskrit how it begins. In the 18th chapter. Samo Dhammo Tapaksocham Kshantir Arjavam Evacha Jnanam Vijnanam Astikyam Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. These are the qualities. Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. His swabhav and his activities will be like this. So, Srila Prabhupada was reading that, having his disciple read that, and he was discussing like this, that if a person is to have the qualification to realize God, use that word, God realization, right? Not theoretical, then he must have these qualities. Now, of course, in the biblical, the New Testament parts of the Bible, Jesus Christ is described. He has these qualities. Sadhu, right? He's saintly personality, and he has these qualities, all of them, those Brahminical qualities. So they were nodding their heads in agreement. They were appreciating very much. And then at the end of that conversation, then one of them, who was the kind of the representative of the others, he said to Srila Prabhupada, he said, actually, he was saying something like, your divine holiness. He addressed Prabhupada in that way, that we appreciate and we agree so much with what you have told. And as we are sitting here listening to you, surrounded by all of your disciples, we also feel as if we are your disciples. And Prabhupada was very happy to hear that. And he said, bring some prasadam for them. They brought some Mangalartik sweets and stuff, It was a very sweet exchange. Yeah, so there's no way around this, you can't cheat and pose. No one can really successfully pose themselves as a God-realized personality if they have not controlled those 6 urges. It will come out blatantly. And we've seen it so many times, especially in India. And we've certainly seen it in our own institutions started by Srila Prabhupada. So much hypocrisy. So the real standard is first sloka of Upadeshamrita. And we can check ourselves and we can check anyone else, But really it means Shuddha Bhakti. So the devotees are intent on practical renunciation, yukta vairagya. That's very essential, yukta vairagya. And thus they remain aloof from dry renunciation. Therefore, the regulation to abandon all contact with the sense objects does not pertain to them. Right? So we know that the impersonalists, they actually try to completely disconnect themselves from any contact with the sense objects. But Yukta Vairagya is the very principle that Mahaprabhu has introduced. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Yukta Vairagya. And we've heard that from Prabhupada hundreds and thousands of times. What does Yukta Vairagya mean? There's 2 types of renunciation. Falgu Vairagya and Yukta Vairagya. What's the meaning of these?
False renunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And Yukta Vairagya means to engage things in the service of Krishna. Srila Maharaj used to say dedication rather than renunciation.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than reject things, want to engage creates and for the pleasure and happiness of Krishna.
Mm-hmm. Anything more on that? Yukta Vairagya. So, Srila Prabhupada, he said that if an impersonalist, someone comes to give them some money, they will say, no, I have no connection with money. But we have a different form of renunciation. And that is that if a person brings money, we say, very good, we will engage this in the service of Krishna. And without attachment, anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam uchite. This is the verse of Rupa Goswami defining yukta vairagya. Anasaktasya vishayan means without attachment to the vishaya, to the sense objects. Yatarham upayunjata, but then engaging them. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe, that these objects are related to Krishna. They have a relationship with Krishna. They belong to Krishna. They are Krishna's energy. Nirbandha Krishna sambandha. Sambandhe. Krishna sambandhe. So the Vaishnava sees this is belonging to Krishna. My body belongs to Krishna. My senses, all the objects in this world, it all belongs to Krishna. So yukta vairagyam uchate, with this mood of engaging everything in the service of Krishna, is actual renunciation. But the other type of renunciation is falgu vairagya, because they are not seeing the connection that this belongs to Krishna. And they are renouncing the object itself. But the Vaishnavas, they are renouncing that which is not favorable for the service of Krishna. So this is where Sharanagati comes in. Because whatever is favorable for the service of Krishna, that is accepted. That through that principle of accepting everything that's favorable for the service of Krishna, one can then gradually enter into pure bhakti. And also the opposite, rejecting anything that is not favorable. Ceasing to continue to perform activities that are not favorable for the service of Krishna. This is what determines the purity of the practitioner. If they can't come to this standard, then they get barely even coming, to the level of Sharanagati, what to speak of actual bhakti. So, the devotees are intent on practical renunciation, yukta vairagya, and thus they remain aloof from dry renunciation. Therefore, the regulation to abandon all contact with the sense objects does not pertain to them. When the agitation of the mind is withdrawn, or in other words, when one is devoid of thirst for material enjoyment, the impetuosity of the eyes, of the life air, the hearing propensity, and all other drives become pacified. Prabhupada was saying that also in that lecture I was listening to. Brahma bhuta prasanatma nashochati nakamshati. So we've heard that verse before from Gita. Brahma bhuta prasanatma. Prasanatma means fully satisfied, happy, joyful. Prabhupada is telling. Nashochati nakamshati. He doesn't lament over anything. He doesn't desire. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. He sees every living entity equally. Samasarveshu bhuteshu. Mad bhaktim labate param. When he is there in that standard, then he attains my para bhakti. My para bhakti, pure bhakti. this Upadeshamrita is showing the pathway for the bhakti sadhakas. How to come to this stage, aloof, Brahma Bhuta, where we're not identifying any longer with these material bodies. But this is going on through the engagement of all of these things. Like it says here, when the agitation of the mind is withdrawn, agitation of the mind is withdrawn, or in other words, when one is devoid of thirst for material enjoyment, the impetuosity of the eyes, looking here, looking there, impetuous, the life air itself, and the hearing propensity, and all other drives, they all become pacified. They all become pacified. Therefore, persons who have gained victory over these 6 overwhelming passions can conquer the entire world. The instruction to tolerate these urges is given only for householder devotees, because before giving up householder life, one must first have abandoned all types of urges. That's a pretty tall order. But there's truth in that, we can see. There is truth in that. Nevertheless, the actual criterion is engagement in bhakti. Whether one is in renounced order, whether one is in household life, the real criterion is engagement in bhakti. So if someone is serious and they have tried to dedicate themselves seriously and to follow the process, gradually this natural renunciation will arise within the heart. That's why the famous verse describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, spoken by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which Srila Prabhupada utilized this verse in his Krishna consciousness movement. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Siksharkam Ekat Purushat Purana. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari. No, I'm forgetting the last line. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira something, he is an ocean of mercy. Tamaham Prapadye. I surrender to his lotus feet. This Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Sharira Dhari. How Krishna has now taken this form of Krishna Chaitanya. What is he doing? Vairagya Vidya. Nija Bhakti Yoga. He is giving his own Bhakti Yoga through Vairagya and Vidya. Siksharkam Ekat Purushak Purana. He has come to instruct this. Siksha. Siksha Artam. Purushak Purana. He is that supreme, ancient, supreme personality. Purushak Purana. Now, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari has taken this form. Tamaham Prapadye. I surrender to him, to that person. So, now we're going to read the Anuvritti. We have a few more minutes. The Anuvritti commentary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. So he's telling now, this is his first words in the book, Upadeshamrita. He says, the supremely compassionate Sri Sachinandana Gaura Hari, who purifies the fallen souls, he displayed unlimited mercy towards the jivas, who are ravaged by the influence of Kali, and who are averted from the service of Sri Krishna, by manifesting the instructions known as Sri Sikshastakam. In these verses, he has very succinctly propounded in the form of codes all the instructions regarding the truths of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana for the living entities. His most beloved, Sri Rupa Goswami, heard all these extremely confidential truths of devotional tenets, bhakti tattva, from his lotus mouth at Jagannath Puri and Prayag. And not only did he hear these teachings, but the all-powerful embodiment of praying, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, invested his heart, Rupa Goswami's heart, with the potency by which he could realize these confidential truths of bhakti. Sri Rupa Goswami revealed these instructions in simple and straightforward Sanskrit language in his books, such as Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjvala Nilamani, Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava, Stavamala, and others. These sacred jewels of literature are a mine of good fortune, filled with the priceless gems of prema. Sri Upadeshamrita is one such invaluable jewel of prema. It is a necklace for the devotees of Mahaprabhu, the Gaura Bhaktas. Sri Rupa Goswami collected the essence of all the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and offered it as a gift to the genuine sadhaks. See? So this is the thing. Genuine sadhaks. Only those persons who are genuine, sincere, striving, humble, obedient, and all these things, they can be called genuine sadhaks, attempting even to become sadhaks. But Mahaprabhu has offered this as a gift to such jivas. In Sri Upadeshamrita, two kinds of instruction are given. The first is to give up things that are unfavorable to bhakti. And the second is to adopt things that are favorable to bhakti. As long as the sadhak fails to apply these two kinds of instructions in his life, there is no possibility that bhav bhakti will manifest in his heart, what to speak of prem bhakti. At present, there are many persons who adhere to various types of fabricated views or to doctrines that display only an external veneer of religion, but are actually opposed to bhakti, to ideas that are contrary to the Vedas, to opportunistic views, and to the doctrines of imitationism, sahajya, impersonalism, mayavad, and other diverse and contrary opinions. All such persons fear the instructions given in the form of this Upadeshamrita, considering them to be the personification of Yamaraj, he who administers punishment to the deceased. There it is. They fear it. No question about it. No question about it. I'm going to read that again. All such persons in this list that we just read, they fear the instructions given in the form of this Upadeshamrita, considering them to be the personification of Yamaraj, he who administers punishment to the deceased. But faithful persons who study and recite this Upadeshamrita with great love and apply it in their lives will become free from all kinds of doubt in regard to bhakti, and they will easily attain first bhav bhakti, praying bhakti. Therefore, holding the dust of the lotus feet of the Gurus, following the line of Sri Rupa Goswami upon my head, this Varshabhanavi Dayata Das, the servant of the Lord of the Life, the Prananath of Vrishabhanu Nandini, Shrimati Radhika, is setting down this commentary of Sri Upadeshamrita named Anuvritti. The purpose of doing so is to immerse the jivas in Sri Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was revealed by Sri Rupa Goswami and which was practiced and preached by the Vaishnava preceptors who follow Sri Rupa, Rupanuga Vaishnavacharyas, such as Gaur Kishore Das Babaji and Sri Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Gaur Prema. What a grand opening of his purport, huh? Jai Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai, Sri Upadeshamritam ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Harinama Sankirtana ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nittai Gaur Premanande. Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo